Your Honor, I've been running from first one thing and then another all my life. But there are some things that you just can't run from, and this being one of those.
Imagine you're a college student living in a rented apartment with your best friend. One morning, friends leave notes outside your door. Where are you guys? But inside that room, two young women have been dead for days, arranged in unspeakable positions. The killer didn't just murder. He turned their bodies into his own horrifying works of art. Within 4 days, in August 1990, 5 young students died at the hands of someone the media called the Gainesville Ripper. Who was he? Why did he choose these victims? And how did a peaceful college town turn into hell on earth in the blink of an eye? Welcome to the Case Files, where we reopen the most horrifying criminal cases in history, analyzing every detail and taking you on a journey to uncover the truth behind shocking crimes. Today, we're taking a deep dive into one of the most terrifying serial murder cases in American history, the Gainesville Ripper, Danny Rolling, and the nightmare that shook Florida. This isn't just the story of 5 students brutally murdered. It's also the story of a killer nurtured by violence, raised in darkness, and who transformed his own pain into other people's nightmares. Join us as we step into Gainesville, Florida, August 1990, where darkness engulfed an entire generation of students. A peaceful college. Town before the storm. Gainesville, Florida, a college town famous for its mild climate and prestigious universities like the University of Florida and Santa Fe Community College. In August 1990, thousands of students returned to campus after summer break. They were excited to join student activities, prepare for the new football season, and looked forward to the beautiful experiences of youth. New President John Lombardi had just taken office, expected to bring fresh perspective to the institution. The atmosphere was filled with the joy and brightness of youth. But among those thousands of student faces, there was one unfamiliar man. No one paid attention to him. No one knew that inside his head, he was hatching the most brutal plan. Danny Harold Rolling, a 36-year-old drifter, had quietly appeared in Gainesville. He lived in the woods near campus, set up a makeshift tent, watched students come and go, selecting targets. And on the night of August 24, 1990, he began to act. First case, 2 freshman girls, Sonia Larson and Christina Powell. August 24, 1990, apartment at Williamsburg Village Apartments. Sonia Larson, 18, and Christina Powell, 17. 2 young women full of dreams, just starting their first year at the University of Florida. Since there was no room in the dormitories, they rented an apartment together at Williamsburg Village. Because cell phones weren't common yet, they had to wait for a landline installation before they could call home to let their families know they were safe. On the night of August 24th, Danny Rolling used a tie-daba screwdriver to pry open the apartment door. But he was surprised to find the door unlocked, a fatal oversight by the 2 young women. He entered quietly. Christina was sleeping on the sofa downstairs, but Rolling didn't touch her right away. He went upstairs, where Sonia was sleeping on the top bunk bed. He taped Sonia's mouth shut, then stabbed her repeatedly with a hunting knife. Then he went back downstairs, tied Christina's hands, raped, and stabbed her to death. But he didn't stop there. Rolling went back upstairs and raped Sonia's corpse. He showered and cleaned himself thoroughly before leaving the scene, behavior that showed terrifying alertness and meticulousness. But why didn't anyone notice? The next morning, the Florida heat was intense. Neighbors began to smell something strange, but everyone thought it was just summer garbage smell. Sonia and Christina's friends left notes outside the door. "Where are you guys?" But no one dared to knock hard or break in. The bodies of the 2 young women lay in the apartment for days, arranged in the horrible positions Rolling had deliberately left them in. Second case, the Firefly Girl, Krista Hoyt. August 25, 1990, less than 24 hours after the first case, Krista Hoyt, 18, a freshman chemistry major at Santa Fe Community College, was affectionately called Firefly by friends because of her optimistic, cheerful personality. She also worked part-time in the records office of the sheriff's department, a job that required seriousness, and she had never missed work. So when Krista didn't show up for work on Sunday night, August 26th, colleagues became worried. 2 officers were sent to check on her. They knocked on the door. No answer. Going around back and looking through the window, they were frozen in shock. Krista had been decapitated. Her head was placed on a bookshelf facing the front door. Next to it was a large mirror, so that anyone entering would immediately see this horrifying image. This wasn't just murder. This was a meticulously staged work with obvious theatrical intent. At the scene, police discovered Krista had been raped and her abdomen cut open from the pubic bone to the sternum. Rolling had returned to the scene because he forgot to take the victim's wallet, and it was then that he decapitated her, placing her head in that artistic position. The question arises, why would the killer do this? This wasn't the act of an impulsive murderer. This was the behavior of an organized serial killer who wanted to send a message, wanted to create psychological effects. Rolling didn't just want to kill. He wanted attention, wanted to create fear, and wanted to control other people's emotions. Panic engulfs Gainesville. After 3 murders within less than 48 hours, the city of Gainesville fell into chaos. Police formed a task force. The FBI joined the investigation. Hundreds of tips came in, but none led to concrete results. Students panicked. Young women didn't dare live alone. They gathered in groups, slept together for protection. Some decided to drop out, leave the city. Stores selling locks, self-defense weapons, even guard dogs all sold out. President John Lombardi had to launch a free phone campaign so students could report their safety to families. He even allowed students to defer their studies if they felt unable to continue staying in Gainesville. Media descended like bees. Major networks like CNN and The Phil Donahue Show covered the story continuously. Every detail was sensationalized, making fear spread throughout Florida. People began comparing this killer to Ted Bundy, the infamous serial killer who terrorized in the 1970s. But the killer still hadn't stopped. Third case. When even a strong person couldn't fight back. August 27, 1990, 2 days after Krista Hoyt's murder, Tracy Pauls, 23, a high school beauty queen from Miami, and Manuel Manny Taboada, 23, a former football player weighing over 200 pounds, 2 close friends living together in an apartment. Tracy's family felt very secure because their daughter was living with a strong friend like Manny. That evening, Tracy called her mother, reassuring her that she was safe and waiting for Manny to come home from work. But at that moment, Danny Rolling had already been lurking around the apartment complex, watching from the shadows. When he saw Manny hadn't returned, he broke in by prying open the sliding glass door. Entering, Rolling saw Manny sleeping. He was startled by Manny's large build, but still decided to act. A fierce struggle broke out. Rolling later admitted that Manny fought back so hard, he almost knocked him unconscious. But in the end, he still stabbed Manny to death with 31 stab wounds. Then he went to Tracy's room, the person he had targeted from the beginning. Neighbors heard her screaming, but when they looked outside and didn't see anything unusual, they went back inside their homes. Rolling raped Tracy, stabbed her 3 times in the back. Like the previous cases, he used dish soap to erase DNA, then sat and watched each victim's last breath like a ritual. The horrifying truth. The information that even a healthy, large person like Manny couldn't fight off the killer plunged the entire city into maximum panic. Anyone could be a victim. No one felt safe anymore, not even in their own apartments. Wrong suspect: Edward Humphrey and a young man's injustice. While the real killer hadn't been found yet, police temporarily focused suspicion on Edward Lewis Humphrey, 18, a student with a history of mental illness, living in an apartment complex near where the murders occurred. Humphrey had been arrested for attacking his 79-year-old grandmother and was said to have unrequited feelings for Tracy Pauls. The media was flooded with information about Humphrey. Newspapers, TV, radio all suggested he was the Gainesville Ripper. Humphrey's life was completely destroyed. He was publicly ridiculed, condemned by public opinion without any concrete evidence. He had to live in fear, isolated, losing opportunities for education. But the truth was, Danny Rolling, the real perpetrator, was hiding in the woods near campus, watching all the developments. Unexpected clue: pink dye pack and confession tapes. When he ran out of money, Rolling returned to his familiar way of making a living: robbing banks. But during one robbery, a clever bank employee hid a pink dye pack in the money. When Rolling fled, all the money was stained with color after the dye pack exploded. Police gave chase. They caught Rolling's companion, but he disappeared into the woods. On September 7, 1990, Rolling was arrested for robbery, 40 miles south of Gainesville. At first, no one suspected that this bank robber was actually the Gainesville Ripper. But when searching his hideout in the woods, police found audio tapes in which Rolling confessed in detail about each murder with a cold and rambling tone. Initially, since Rolling wasn't suspected in the serial murders, these tapes were temporarily stored in the evidence warehouse, unheard by anyone. But when police reopened and listened to them, they heard the killer's confession for the first time. He described each case with chilling detail, from how he selected victims, how he broke in, to how he sat and watched each of their last breaths. At the same time, the tools found at Rolling's camp, the hunting knife, screwdriver, matched perfectly with the traces left at the Gainesville crime scenes. Connection to the Shreveport case. 3 deaths in 1989. As soon as Rolling's identity was established, police in Shreveport, Louisiana, Rolling's hometown, contacted Gainesville authorities, sharing information about a triple homicide that occurred in 1989. November 4, 1989, Julie Grissom, 24, along with her father William Grissom and 8-year-old brother Sean, were brutally murdered at their home in Shreveport. Julie's body was raped and positioned provocatively, exactly like the victims in Gainesville. Specifically, the killer also used cleaning solution to erase DNA, matching Rolling's habit. The case occurred just hours after Rolling was fired from a nearby restaurant. Initially, Hank Carratter, Julie's ex-boyfriend, was wrongly suspected. He had to quit law, leave the city, and live in fear for many years. But when DNA and evidence were cross-referenced with what was found at Rolling's camp, police confirmed Danny Rolling was the real perpetrator in both murder sprees. Who was Danny Rolling? Darkness from childhood. Danny Harold Rolling was born on May 26, 1954 in Shreveport, Louisiana. His father, James Rolling, was a police officer, Korean War veteran, likely suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and hereditary mental illness. Childhood hell. James Rolling constantly told his son that he was an unwanted child and the source of shame. He physically and mentally abused Danny and his mother almost daily for trivial reasons. One of the first abuses occurred when Danny was still an infant. His father beat him because he didn't like the way he crawled. Danny's mother, Claudia, tried to leave her husband many times, but always came back. She was even hospitalized after James tried to force her to cut herself with a razor blade. The downward spiral. To cope with the pain, Rolling turned to music, playing guitar and singing. But later, he became addicted to drugs and alcohol, making his mental condition worse. As a teenager, he started peeping at women and committing multiple robberies. He had married and had a child, but his wife left, an event that sent him into complete freefall. Rolling began living as a drifter, stealing, recording audio diaries talking to imaginary parents. In one tape, he said, "Mom tried to help me, but I failed. Now I have to go do something." After that recording, he committed the series of murders. Trial process. The killer acts. In November 1991, Rolling was officially charged with 5 murders in Gainesville. Edward Humphrey was completely exonerated, thanks to DNA results at the same time. 1994. Trial. In February 1994, just before the trial began, Rolling suddenly changed his plea to guilty. At trial, he tried to argue he was possessed by demons and created alternate personalities named Gemini from a horror movie, and Enough, Danny spelled backwards. The court presented all evidence, photos of bodies, detailed descriptions of behavior. Some jury members couldn't handle it, had to ask to leave because they were too traumatized. Ex-wife testifies, Rolling's ex-wife shocked the entire courtroom when it was discovered she had a build, hair, and face almost identical to the victim's. However, she completely rejected the demon possession or insanity defense, asserting she had never heard her husband or his family talk about demons. While awaiting sentencing, Rolling even fell in love with a woman attending the trial, wrote her a song, and asked permission to sing before the court instead of making a closing statement. This bizarre behavior didn't save him. April 20th, 1994, Danny Rolling was sentenced to death. Execution, the final confession. Rolling was imprisoned for 12 years on Florida's death row. During this time, Hank Cariter, who had been wrongly suspected in Shreveport, wrote to Rolling, demanding he confess to killing the Grissom family. October 25, 2006. Just hours before execution, Danny Rolling signed an official confession, admitting to murdering Julie Grissom along with her father and brother in 1989. Exactly 17 years after the Shreveport tragedy, the truth finally came to light. Rolling was served a last meal of lobster tail. He sang a hymn instead of making a final statement, witnessed by 47 people, including relatives of the victims. Rolling was pronounced dead at 6:13 p.m. Eastern Time. Legacy of the case. The Danny Rolling case wasn't just a string of savage crimes. It was also a textbook lesson about investigative failures, misdirected media coverage, and lasting trauma for innocent people wrongly suspected. Edward Humphrey and Hank Cariter, 2 people wrongly suspected, are proof that public opinion and media can destroy someone's life with just a few lines of speculation. One lost educational opportunities, the other lost career and honor. The case also showed the importance of DNA analysis. Though still primitive in 1990, it could still solve cases if performed earlier. Federal cooperation between Florida and Louisiana was the key breakthrough that brought Rolling to light. Remembering the victims. Today in Gainesville, there's a graffiti wall along 34th Street where the names of 5 victims are inscribed: Sonia Larson, Christina Powell, Krista Hoyt, Manuel Taboada, and Tracy Pauls. This is a memorial site and a reminder. Never let darkness have a chance to return. Danny Rolling wasn't a mythical monster. He was an ordinary man, and that's what's most terrifying. Serial killers don't come from movies. They could be living right among us, blending into crowds, speaking softly, and no one suspects them. This case was also the inspiration for the horror film Scream, with the killer character wearing a ghost face mask, a pop culture legacy showing the level of haunting the case left behind. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to Hit like to support us, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss other shocking cases. Share this video with friends interested in criminology and criminal investigation. See you in the next episode of the Case Files, because behind every crime, there's a truth waiting to be uncovered.